Good evening, Jan John here. We have 5 physical senses, 4 of which are located on the head: hearing, taste, sight and smell, and the 5th, touch, is located all over the body, but with varying degrees of sensitivity. These senses enable us to have contact with the external world. They are the way in which we perceive the environment around us. If you close your eyes for a moment, you will quickly understand what I mean. Without sight, we have far less capability to know what is happening about us. When we compare animals with human beings, we can see a substantial difference in the way we react with the external world and the part our senses and thinking play. Animals are much more sensory in their experience. They rely much more upon the physical senses for all their activities. You can watch dogs, for example, and you can see they rely upon smell enormously, far more than we do. They also use their hearing much more than humans. If you watch a dog's ears, you can see the ears changing direction to focus on different sounds. Human beings, though, because we live in a more technological world, use our mind much more and our physical senses much less. We spend most of our time thinking, digesting information, making plans, analyzing our experiences, and thinking about the past and future. We live in a world where iPhones, TVs, computers, radios are endemic and seem almost like a substitute for our physical senses. Try, for example, taking a walk in a forest or a park, but don't take any electronic devices with you. Try only to use your physical senses. Can you see a difference? Rather than scrolling down your iPhone, checking Facebook messages, or looking at 2-dimensional pictures of other people, you can see, smell and breathe the 3-dimensional world around you. But for some people it may feel like a strange experience. For people who hardly ever take their eyes off the iPhone screen or the computer screen or the TV screen, looking at the natural world can seem quite odd. I notice all around me people rarely look at what is going on in their own environment. They're nearly always looking at some electronic device they have, or talking into a telephone with somebody else, rather than just observing the sky, the clouds, the buildings in the distance, the birds flying in the sky, the trees shaking in the wind. People seem to have mostly lost the ability to observe the natural world. So is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I suppose it depends upon how you see our happiness in the world. When we look at animals, they seem to have a far simpler existence, and sometimes I think we quite envy animals. Their life does not seem to have the stress and concerns about the future that we do. Dogs and cats don't seem to worry about whether they have enough money in the bank or when they are going to die, or even beyond their next meal. They seem to live life in a very short-term way because they are not dominated by their mind as we are. Of course, our domination of the mind has helped us to produce incredible technology and a more comfortable life in many ways. However, we have also become enslaved to that technology. Enslaved. So I do think that many people will feel that we are losing experiential quality in our lives, forgetting to look at the clouds or smell the flowers or listen to the birds singing in the trees. I'm sure many people will say, however, that these things are not so interesting or entertaining, certainly not as exciting as looking at your friends posting stuff on Facebook. Is that right? Well, again, it depends upon your value system and where you think happiness lies in your life. I think the problem with too much concern with our technology and our society is that we become slaves to society's values rather than our own. The people who are addicted to Facebook may not be all that happy because they are always frustrated at not having the attention and fame which other people have they see on Facebook. Facebook users are pursuing a kind of celebrity status which in reality is only available for a very few. Most of the celebrity seekers are going to be extremely frustrated and end up feeling envious or jealous. Maybe better if they spent less time worrying about what other people think and just appreciated living, the enjoyment of using their senses and being alive and healthy. Don't you agree? People who love the outdoors, I think, are quite lucky. They have a source of enjoyment in just being in nature, in a forest, on a hillside, rowing down a river, or walking on the beach. They get a certain sense of satisfaction which does not necessitate other people being interested in you or in any way following the values of society. So let's do an essay question. The question is, human beings nowadays especially are quite different from animals in the way we use our physical senses. We use our minds much more. Do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing? Introduction, first of all. I imagine millions of years ago, human beings lived almost entirely by their physical senses. When they were hunting animals, for example, their eyes, ears, and sense of smell would have been of the utmost importance, and the abstract use of the brain would have been far less significant. But as human beings have developed technology and organization, the physical senses have become less important and the use of the mind has become paramount. Second paragraph. I'm going to support more use of the physical senses. In many ways, I think technology has gone too far and we have lost touch with the real world. The world of trees, plants, animals, birds, clouds, mountains and rivers. We hardly take any notice of anymore because we are so absorbed with our technology and our mind games. People spend far too much time in front of computer screens or using iPhones or switching TV channels using the remote control. We need to remind ourselves of the simplicity of life and the simple pleasures of enjoying the beauty of nature and the freedom to exist without the necessity of carrying a whole bag of electronic accessories with you everywhere. I have a friend who is totally addicted to her iPhone. She hardly ever raises her eyes to see what is going on around her and frequently walks into people. Yesterday she did this and the other person looked quite annoyed. Yet my friend seemed totally nonplussed. She just carried on walking and went back to looking at her iPhone. I said to her later that, "Did you notice that naked man run past you earlier?" As a joke, of course. And she looked shocked and surprised and said, "Really?" I said, "No, of course not, but if there had been, you wouldn't have noticed, would you? Because your head is stuck in your phone all the time." She looked a bit insulted at this remark, but it may have served to jolt her out of her habits a little bit. Jolt her, J-O-L-T, her out of her habits a little bit. Third paragraph, saying something in support of not using our senses so much. On the other hand, of course, we do live in a very cerebral world. Cerebral, C-E-L-E-B-R-A-L, and the brain is paramount. The complexity of our modern world is such that we need to be using our brain all the time if we are to deal successfully with the complicated tasks we have each day. So there is no getting away from the need to use our abstract thinking capacities. Last paragraph, conclusion. In conclusion, yes, I think we have lost sight of the simple pleasure of using our physical senses, and people should remind themselves each day that they do in fact have eyes, ears, a nose, a tongue, and 5 fingers on each hand. And that's the end of the essay. I often think that when I eventually retire, if I do, I may go to live in a beautiful rural area where there are lots of trees and birds. But I do wrestle with my desires, wrestle, W-R-E-S-T-L-E, with my desires, which are satisfied more in the city. The city, unfortunately, is quite seductive. There are lots of exciting things going on in cities, so we tend to live in a more cerebral world, using our minds rather than our senses like other animals. However, while I am walking, even in the city, I can still take time to look at the clouds, the river, and the people passing by, rather than my iPhone. Thank you, folks. Goodbye.